Howdy folks, John here from rchelicopterfun.com. Orange bag arrived in the mail, which can only mean one thing, review day today. And by looking at the other accessories on the bench, should give you a hint of what's inside. Let's get into it. It's always interesting opening up packages from Banggood to see what might have been damaged in the shipping. But this one actually is better than the first one, which I got several years ago. And that's one of these KSGER T12 soldering stations. For any who follow my channel, you know I'm really impressed with this. This is the newest, latest version, the 3.1S. And we're going to be covering what makes it different from the original one, if it's better, that type of thing. Going to be taking a deep dive into it. I want to thank Banggood right now for sending it so we can all have a look at it together. As usual, there'll be product links below in the description. I'll also have the video divided up into time chapters so you can just click throughout it if there's one area that you want to look at. First, we're going to look at the station. And for those who want to stick around at the end of the video, we'll open it up and see how it works. As I said, the first improvement appears to be packaging. It's nicely protected in some foam wrap, which wasn't the case with the first one. I actually got a questionnaire about Banggood's packaging about a month back. I don't know if everyone did, but recently they seem to be packaging stuff better. It's a little more protected. So the first big improvement with the 3.1 version is just your options that you can get with it. With the original, you were limited to the style of handle, and it only came with the knife tip. So the new one, you've actually got 6 different handle versions that you can choose from. You've got the original 9501 handle, but you can also get the 907 handle, which I picked for this one, just to see what the difference is. I really like the 9501. But a lot of people seem to like these 907s, so I thought I'd give it a go. You can get it in 3 different colors, the blue, a whitey beige, and a black one. And then you can also get 2 different colors of their aluminum handle. And I've tried this one as well. I don't like the aluminum handle nearly as much. I don't think it's as safe if you were to solder on an energized circuit by mistake, which I have done. Yeah, the tip is insulated, but I just don't like a metal handle. Not many soldering irons do have metal handles. They're all plastic for a reason, and that's so they're insulated. But that's personal choice. And we'll go over what's inside the handle here. We'll open it up with the station at the end of the video for those who want to stick around. But that's the 907 handle. A little bit longer distance from, working distance from the your grip to where the end of the tip is. And the tip isn't changeable on the fly as easy like these handles. You have to unscrew this little end piece to slide the tip in and out. So I still think I'm going to like this handle better, but we'll give this one a go. And the other big improvement is it comes with 3 tips now instead of just that knife tip, which it does still come with, just the regular K T12 tip, but it also comes with the ILS fine conical tip, and one of my favorite tips and most used tips, the D24 wedge. So it's nice to see an assortment of tips. You can still get the tip set that I got for this one. It's a 10 tip set. I made this holder. Again, there's a video down below on that. But yeah, they're not that expensive, and they do hold up well. I've never had to replace a tip, so no problem with these tips. And again, that's the most impressive thing with these T12 stations is they use the direct drive tip technology where the heating element and sensor is built right into the tip, giving incredibly fast and accurate response times. These things heat up in under 10 seconds to operating temperature, and they really hold the temperature fine. There's PID algorithms in them. You can select those in the station. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. It just gives it a little bit finer control, and you can even individually calibrate the tips, which I do have a separate video on, again, below in the description. So let's get into the station itself. So again, this is the 3.1S version. I don't expect the station the exterior hardware to look any different. So you've got an OLED display on it, and you've got a 20-position push-button encoder to select all your different menu settings. You can change the temperature with that. I rather like a dial to change temperature up or down rather than push buttons, but that's just personal preference. Has a 5-pin GX12 aviation connector to plug your handles into. And on the back, we've got a C14 power input with a little fuse built right into the power connector. It's just a 5-amp fuse, and your on and off switch. And you'll notice it doesn't come with any instructions. They're pretty basic to use though, and we'll go over that. And the other thing it doesn't come with is a power cord, the C13 power cord, because these are a universal voltage meant for all kinds of markets. And you know, North America here, we're running on 120 volt AC. So you have to have a computer cord, C13 plug on it to plug into your C14 here. Most of us have a lot of these kicking around, but if you don't, you'd have to order a separate cord as well for your specific country. Okay, let's get into the menu, see if it's changed at all from the original one. Before powering it up and going through the menus, thought I should cover a couple more basics. The case itself is a nice strong extruded aluminum, just like the original. In fact, it's exactly the same case. There's 4 little rubber feet glued on the bottom so it doesn't slide around or mark up your work surface. I'll just plug our power cord in. And these usually have a slight delay, boot up time. Switch it on. Well, it's not too bad. Okay, so we'll go over our display here once we've got everything plugged in. It's reading error now. This is probably one of the most common questions that comes up on these things is what's with the error? Well, first off, your handle has to be plugged in. There's a little orientation notch on the top of the GX connector, faces up. It will only plug into the connector one way. Screw that in. It beeped, but the error is still there. Why is that? Because we don't have a tip in. So you have to have a soldering tip in the handle for that error to go out, and it has to be slid in all the way. And that is the one thing with the 907 holder. That's pretty much impossible to goof up, because with this little barrel that threads on, it will make sure the iron tip is held all the way tight into the holder to make contact. So I'll just get out the little conical tip here, I guess. Start with it. And we'll see, as soon as we plug this in, that error should go off. And yes, it did. So we'll slide that back on. This will be getting hot probably, so don't touch anything. Sometimes these things, when you plug the tip in, it'll do this error and it'll flash on and off. The temperature will show another error. It jumps around, it hunts. And once they go through that initialization stage, they never do it again. I showed that in the first review, or actually no, it was in the tip calibration video. Regardless, this one didn't do it, and everything seems to be working. We'll go over what's on the screen here real quick. So the set temperature is what we've actually got the temperature set at. So if we turn that to 110, yes, let's just zoom in a little bit more. The big number is our actual tip temperature. You see it's hunting still a little bit, and that's probably because this tip hasn't gone through its heat up and cool cycles. When we dial the temperature up, actually let's dial it up right now. Let's go up to 250. See, there we go. Now we're getting that error. There, you saw the error flash. It's kind of hunting a bit. Now it's stabilized. K0, that's our tip selection. It's a K tip. 0 means it hasn't been calibrated yet. Once it's calibrated, there's a little asterisk or a star beside that. This is just our power output. If we quench the tip in a damp sponge, you'll see that power output number jumping. Time is right beside it. And then this temperature is our either the NTC temperature sensor that's in the handle here, or the CPU processor temperature that's in the station. This is all selected through the menus. And speaking of menus, let's go into those right now. So to get into the menu screen, you push and hold the encoder button in for 3 seconds. Okay, so the first one that comes up is PID adjustment. This is something new that wasn't on the 2.1 version. I wouldn't even recommend messing around with this, but it's there if you want to. Out of the factory, our PID settings are 100 for proportional, 30 for integral, and what is that? 100 for derivative. So get out of that, just hold it in for 3 seconds. Okay, standby. This program's in what temperature it's set at when it's in standby mode, 100 Celsius. I like that. How long it takes to go in standby mode. So there's a little motion sensor in the iron handle, and if it doesn't detect any motion, after 10 minutes, it will go into standby mode. We'll go into whatever temperature you select there, and to wake it up, it's defaulted to shake here. So as soon as you pick up the handle, it will wake up and go back into your running temperature. You can change it from shake to switch, where you'd actually have to push the switch to get it to go wake back up. And manual, I believe, is switch as well. Auto is either the push button or the shaking of the handle. But I'm going to go back to shake and push it 3 seconds. Sleep, how long after it goes into standby it goes into sleep. Set at 15 minutes. I'm going to dial, 15 is good. And wake up mode, this is just how you wake it back up. You can either shake the handle, but I like it in manual mode, so you actually have to press the button for it to wake up. Boost. This is an interesting little feature on these things. Say you're working on normal through-hole stuff, components on through-hole board. You're running at 360 Celsius. And you come across a big ground plane, or you've got a big wire you want to solder. Instead of dialing the temperature up and then having to dial it back down, you can hit this boost function, which you just push the button or dial it, and it will boost it whatever temperature you've got in here. So if you were at 350 and you set it for 50 Celsius boost, it would go up to 400, and then the time that it would stay at that. I've got it set for 3 minutes, but you can dial that up and down for however long you want it to boost. It's a function I don't really use much, but some people would probably find it handy. Code end, I think this should read cold end. Regardless, what this sets is what sensor the station is using to read the ambient temperature. And apparently this will allow it to fine-tune the tip temperatures a little better if it knows what the ambient temperature is. NTC is the little temperature sensor up in the handle itself here, so it will register the temperature in the handle, or you can register it in the CPU. Tip. This is your tip selection inventory. Now you've got up to 99 tip inventory in this thing, massive. And all this will allow you to do is put a tip into inventory with the check or take it out. So we know this station came with an ILS, a D12, and a K. So let's just go through these. They're in alphabetical order. So there you see out of the box it came with a B2 tip selected. I'm going to turn that off. We don't have a B2 tip in our inventory. A BL tip we don't have in our inventory. A BC2 we don't have in our inventory. D24 we do, there's the check mark. If you didn't have the check mark there, you would push that. So we've put D24 into our inventory. ILS is in our inventory. JL02 is not, so we'll get rid of that one. K-tip is in our inventory, and none of the others. Now all that does is then when you do your tip selection, you don't have to scroll through them all. It'll just show you what tips you've already put in your inventory. Coder. It will reverse the direction of your encoder. So that's a new feature that the 2.1 didn't have. Password. Just password protects the unit. This might be useful if you have kids or if multiple people use the station, you could set that. I never do. So we'll leave it turned off. Screen save. You can have it turned on, just moves the pixels on the screen around a bit, so the same ones aren't always lit up. And delay time, let's dial that up to 15 minutes. Buzzer, either turn it on or off. If you don't like things beeping at you, turn it off. Voltage, this will display the voltage in the display or not. This is handy if you're running it off a battery. That's what's kind of neat with these KSGER T12s. The head unit here, which is this, just the front piece, and the circuit board, you can run it off of a battery if you wanted to. So if you wanted to monitor the battery voltage while you're using it, you could. But we're running it off of the built-in power supply. Low voltage protection, again, this is if you're powering it from battery. I've got it turned off, but if you had it on, it would first read an alarm when it got to whatever programmable voltage you want to run in there, and then it would go into sleep mode, so the iron gets turned off and wouldn't be drawing any heater power. But we've got that turned off, of course, because we're running it off of the internal power supply. Power on, this will dictate what mode it goes into when you first turn it on. So I've got it going into standby mode. You can have it into running, so it would ramp right up to your operating temperature, whatever you'd set. Or you could just have it come on in sleep mode, and then you'd have to wake it up from sleep. But I like it coming on in standby mode, so it automatically just comes up to 100 Celsius, and then it comes up to my working temperature really quick when I shake the handle. Desolder, these next two fields, 14 and 15, desolder and pump set, not supported with the hardware on this thing. I don't know if it's got a desoldering option as well in a different version, but you never even have to, but you don't worry about those two fields. Display, this is something new on the 3.1 version. You've either got the normal display like our old one, which is display 2, which we saw originally. Let's just go back to the beginning here. So it shows all this information. I actually like this display feature because if we go to display 1, it gets rid of all that other stuff and just gives you your set temperature, the temperature that the iron is at in a nice big easy to read number, and then it just shows you what tip you've got. Doesn't show your NTC temperature, doesn't show the time, doesn't show all that, what I think is unnecessary stuff, but at least it gives you the option, right? So we're just going to leave it in that display mode, seeing that will probably be easier to see on the camera when we're actually using it. Okay, that was field 16. Field 17 is language. We've got English and Chinese, just like the 2.1 version, but 3.1 also gives us Russian. So they've added Russian to the language selection. Date and time. Just set our year, our month, our day, our time. No big deal there. System info, of course, will show us the software and the hardware version. So this is indeed version 3.1 for the hardware and 3.1S for the software version, which we would expect. And then 20 takes us to reset, resets any changes you made to any of those values back to their default factory settings. And 21 exits, or of course you can just hold the dial in for 3 seconds. Now that we've gone through all the menus, thought I better just explain the basics of how you change the tip and the temperature. So to change the temperature selection, you just press the encoder once, and then you dial your temperature up or down. Let's go to 260 here. And there it comes right up. To change your tip type is displayed up in the upper right corner. You press the encoder in and hold it and turn clockwise or to the right. That would be reversed if you reversed it in the setup menu there in the encoder direction. And I'm actually going to change this to a D24 tip to do our temperature checking. But as you can see, there's our 3 tip selections. So if you didn't go through your tip inventory in the menu first, you may have to go through a whole bunch of tips if you didn't cross out the ones you don't have. So we've just got the 3 in there, but we'll select D24. So there, we'll show the tip up in there. You may notice the screen flickering. That's just the camera frame rate isn't matched to the display here. Just looking at it with the naked eye though, there's no flickering at all. And to go into calibration mode, you push in the encoder and turn counterclockwise or left. And there's the tip calibration menu. Again, I've got a separate video on that. I'll link to it below in the description. So now that we've got that all set, let's see how accurate this thing is out of the box before even calibrating a tip. Oh, and I should mention the tip selection. If you physically change a tip in the iron, but you forget to change it in the unit here, it's really no big deal. You know, it's not going to cause any problems. Your temperature probably won't be as accurate because when you do a tip calibration, it stores offsets for that specific tip in that memory location for that tip. So if you were to have the wrong tip in there, the offsets will be off and the temperature just won't be as accurate. But I've done it many times and really it's not that big of a deal. Let's see how accurate it is. I'm going to put a little solder on there just to improve heat conductivity between the tip and the sensor. This is just one of those little FG100 solder tip temperature monitors. So we've got the temperature set on the station to 300. And as you can see, we're very close at 303. Let's just dial this up to we'll go up to 340. You can see how quickly it responds and how accurate it is. So there the station says it's at 340. This is lagging a little bit behind. But all in all, very close. It's overshooting a little bit. It'll probably start coming back down now. Yeah, this could probably use a calibration if we really want to be precise. Let's go to, let's go all the way. Well, I normally work, the highest I go is 380. Let's see how we're doing there. Again, we're overshooting a little bit, but within 10 degrees. Let's go up to 420. I would never go any warmer than that, even though the station does go, if you're curious, the highest is 480, but that will really shorten tip life if you're always using it at that temperature. You notice on this station, the encoder dials up and down. If you go slow by 1 degree increments, if you go fast, then it goes by 10 degree increments. It's hard to see. Whereas the old 2.1 version, you could set that in the programming. You could set what your incremental changes were, and I had it to 10 degree increments. You know, I don't need 1 degree resolution. As you saw there, it had stabilized around 384, so it wasn't bad at all. And there we go, boom. You can see how quick it comes up. So not bad without even doing a calibration yet on it. So that's the type of accuracy you can get. I should mention this handle. I can already tell I'm not going to like using it nearly as much as the 951 handle. I just find this working distance too far. You can see where you grip both. The 9501, the tip slides quite a bit further in, so you've got a shorter working distance. It's more like using, you know, a pencil or a pen. You're right there close, whereas this is quite far away. A good, what do we got here? Good 11, 12 centimeters away from where you're holding it to the work area. Let's get into the iron in the station so you can see the guts. We'd start with the iron, and we'll start with the GX12. We'll see how the solder work is in this thing. In my review of the first one, I was not too happy with the soldering job. There's nothing wrong with that. So that's good to see. How do we open this? We've got a little silicone sleeve, but that doesn't mean anything. Oh, we just unscrew this end like so, and then probably push this out. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, this is nicer than the 9501. Everything's soldered on the board. So there's our little motion switch. There's our little NTC axial thermistor. Looks like a little Zener diode, but it is a temperature sensor. And then our 3 contacts. That would sit in there like that. So there's our 1 power band contact, our second one, and our ground. Let's check that real quick. If this thing is ESD grounded. Zoom out here as much as I can. Go into continuity. We will hold 1 probe on the ground pin of the C14 power input, and we will touch the tip. Oh, you know what helps? You actually have the son of a gun plugged in. There! Well, let's try it. Careful. There we go. So, yeah, tip is grounded to earth ground, so it's static protected. So that's all there is to that. Quite nice. I don't know if you noticed, nice strain relief on the handle itself. Handle is nice and solid. So this handle, the 907, it is built better than the original plastic 9501 handle, but I like the feel of this handle, but to each their own. So there's just there's Phillips screws to get the top and bottoms off, but just to open the top half, you just have to take the 4 screws out of the top here. And we'll see if this is the same as the 2.1 version. I expect it's going to be, other than the control board, of course. Okie doke, let's have a look in here. So let's look at the control board first. What do we got there? An ARM STM32F101RB 64-pin quad flat pack. So that's our little processor. So that's different than the 2.1 version. There's our little speaker for the beeper. The RTC real-time clock battery is soldered right onto the board. In the other version, it was a separate battery that was glued on top of the transformer of the power supply, and that was a problem with that original version. They fixed that shortly after I got mine, but the battery was grounded out and it was draining off the real-time clock battery. But no such problem with this. And then the power of the board is plugged into the switch mode power supply here. We'll go over that real quick, and there's the little aviation connector. So switch mode power supply is identical to the 2.1 versions. It's version 2.04, which is the same. And I had talked a lot about that. Just going over this real quick. There's our power input from the C14 soldered directly to the board. So there's the switch. Like I said, you can pop this out and swap it 180 degrees if you wanted to change the orientation. And it's just soldered onto the board here. There's another little inline fuse, so it's double fuse protected. Ceramic cap, coil. There's our rectifier, another NTC current limiter. Big input capacitor. These things are known to leak. In fact, my other one, it did start to leak, so I had to replace it. So this is really the weakest link, I believe, on this board. I had also mentioned in that update video I did on the original T12 that, as nice as this power supply is, there are some faults with it. The biggest one is this heat sink here. The one cooling fin here is right over top of the power trace. You know, it's insulated, and this is floating, so if it was to get energized, wouldn't really be a big deal. Not ideal though, right? So it'd be nice to see them, you know, on my other one, I had actually shaved the corner down a little bit so it didn't go over that trace. And same thing over here, it's going over another trace on the, this is a, what do we got here? This is the rectifier, I believe. Yep, it's an MBRF 20200CT. Big heat sink, but like I said, that heat sink is going over the power trace there and one over here. But again, they're insulated. I don't think anyone's going to have a problem with it. But if you're concerned, you can always lift this heat sink a little bit higher off of the board. Of course, you're going to have to move the rectifier up a little bit. There's ways to get around it. Put some Kapton tape underneath, whatever works for you. Big isolation slot all the way through the board under the transformer. So the secondary is isolated from the primary through this optocoupler. Some more filtering on the output. And there's the switching MOSFET on another little heat sink. If you're curious of the number on that, it's a 20N60. So that's the guts. Now, the one safety concern here is the case itself is actually not grounded. There's really no reason for it, but if you're concerned, like I am, in the update video I showed how to ground this. You just run a wire from your grounding pin from your C14 power input and just screw it to the case itself, so the case is earth grounded if you wanted to do that. Let's get it back together and I'll give you my final thoughts on this thing. Forgot to mention the cable on the handle is nice soft silicone. Of course, it's heat resistant being silicone, which to me is a huge safety feature. Any soldering tool should have a silicone sheath or heat resistant cable, in my opinion. And direct drive tip technology. Once you get used to it, it's hard to go back to old slide-on tips. They're just effortless. They heat up so quick. They maintain their temperature so accurately. Incredible response. Just a real treat to use. Getting one of their little soldering stands, especially for the 907 handle and the original 9501. These are really nice. They're only about 14-15 bucks, so it's a good little accessory to pick up. You know, brass shavings are also another good accessory. I like cleaning my iron tips in brass shavings as I'm using a soldering iron, and then I always like a wet sponge for my final cleanup. It really does a good job at taking all the flux and rosin off the tip. So, to sum up on the little KSGER T12 3.1S version, just like the 2.1S, if you're in the market for a direct drive soldering station and you don't want to pay $300 for a Hakko 951, these to me are one of the best options, if not the best option out there. They're built tough, they're fairly good quality. You know, there's a few little misses on them, like not having a grounded case, which is easy to fix. As far as the 3.1 version, the value is a little bit better, of course, because they're giving you 3 different handle options, a few colors as well, and you're getting the 3 tips with them, the conical, the knife, and of course the wedge. As far as the menus go in here, very few changes over the original. The one I might miss the most is not having that incremental temperature programming, but having the slow dial 1 degree increments and then fast dial 10. That's just going to take some getting used to, and it might even be better in the long run. I, of course, like the different display options. The one option gives you the nice big actual temperature display, and to me this is the one I'm going to use the most. So just my thoughts on these things. If you're interested at all in the new 3.1, how it differs from the 2.1, hopefully that covered most of it. If you're just interested in these little soldering stations in general, They're small form factor. They work great. Like I said, I've had my original 2.1 for almost 2 years now, and it's never let me down. It gets lots of use, and I just love these little guys. So I like reviewing them. And again, I'll have links below in the description to this station, some of the accessories, and then all the other videos I've done on the T12s in general, if you're curious about them. Thanks for watching, folks, and we'll see you next time.